Welcome to Now Innovating, a research to impact series at the University of Calgary. I'm your host, Julia McGregor. After a successful exhibition at the 2023 Global Energy Show with UCalgary partners from across campus, we are bringing you our final Energy Burst episode and also the Season 4 finale, where we're recording at Innovate Calgary's Energy Transition Centre. This episode, I speak with Thomas Barchyn and Dr. Chris Hugenholtz from the Faculty of Arts Department of Geography. They're behind the technology and the research program for PoMELO. PoMELO is a vehicle-based methane emissions management system for the upstream oil and gas sector and was the star attraction of the UCalgary exhibit at the Global Energy Show. Hello, Tom, and hello, Chris, and welcome to Now Innovating.
Hi. Good morning.
I'm so happy to have you here. I know we've spent a lot of time together at the Global Energy Show for the last 3 days, but the first question I have for you all really is why methane emissions? Like, what led you to your research interest in this area?
Methane's a pretty important greenhouse gas, and it's considered actually a short-lived climate pollutant on kind of decadal timescales. And as a result of kind of global efforts to, mitigate climate change, methane has become kind of a big target for near-term climate mitigation. Canada as well, in part of its net zero goals, as well as the province of Alberta in different goals to reduce emissions of methane from anthropogenic or human sources. And that's where we're focused, is really looking at ways that we can reduce that greenhouse gas in particular near term, and kind of shift a bit of our research away from studying climate change to kind of acting, right? To act to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions from the energy sector especially.
Yeah, methane is also, I will say, an incredible research challenge, and it's really been fun to work on that.
Cool, and I know your backgrounds were looking at wind and work with sand dunes, and I think it's just really cool how that has led you, I think your area of expertise in that, how does that lend itself to, researching methane?
I could take that, yes. So the hard part of working with methane is you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. So you have to use specialized instruments, which is something we used in our studies of sand dunes. And you have to link those together and really understand the wind. The wind is, I think, probably our secret sauce, our specialty. And so wind, how wind blows sand and how wind moves methane has a lot of parallels. And so our research in sand dunes nicely led through to our work on methane.
So now tell me more about the PoMELO system and really the benefits of your technology, to address, the greenhouse gas challenge.
PoMELO is, it's like a technology suite, and we refer to it as an emission management system. So most people see it as a technology that sits on top of a truck that measures different atmospheric properties and methane, but it's a lot more than that. And we've tried to take kind of scientific principles. I often say to people, we've embedded atmospheric scientists and data scientists and in the computer.
So instead of a doc in a box, you have an atmospheric scientist in a box.
Yeah, okay. And so we've basically reproduced that through algorithms, through coding, so that as a technology, and I'll hand it over to Tom for kind of more details, but it allows us to find methane emissions, in particular in the oil and gas sector, fast, and provide a lot more kind of rich intelligence about those emissions than would otherwise be possible if you were just carrying a sensor around on your own. We've tried to kind of accelerate from data and measurement to decision making. And so that's a big gap that a lot of technology companies face. And so our research has really been about bridging that gap. But that only provides you, I guess, a little sense of the technology. I can hand it to Tom for some of the more details.
Perfect.
Yeah, so PoMELO is a physical thing, is a system that sits on top of a truck. And so we have crews out there driving the trucks around and gives them all the information they need to find the emissions, figure out how much, and then go straight to action. So it's really been exciting to see how technology and put the atmospheric scientist in the box and get it to work in the real world.
Amazing. It sounds really great because I'm picturing now someone, if you can't see methane and don't know where it is, I'm just walking around with a sensor. It seems like your technology, with the mobile aspect of it, sounds fantastic. So I know, Tom, that since you invented the actual technology algorithm, the atmospheric scientist, I guess, in the box component, and that was back in 2017 that you had the initial prototype developed. What really led you both to the decision, to instead of doing a startup company, to look at licensing the technology instead?
There's the relationships we have with our industrial partners have been incredibly productive for research. So we have great collaborative partnerships where we learn from them and they learn from us. So that opportunity to license the technology and still stay engaged with partners and understand that transition from technology to real world impact has been possible through the licensing model, whereas if it proceeded to a startup, it would be out of our hands. And I think that's probably one of the major reasons to be able to stay engaged with the research and continue advancing. And the technological advancement never ends.
Yeah, Chris has told me stories where you're out somewhere and you're working on the code and updating it while you're driving around. So
yes, yeah.
Very iterative with your technology.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and just to echo that, the innovation might slow with the attention focused on startup, right? Because there's different goals in mind. I think it's been really important that we stay focused on innovation and on working through kind of the finer scale elements of the technology readiness level into commercial readiness level, which I think being able to partner and pilot and test and get feedback and engage on a research side has been invaluable. So for us, that model has worked quite well.
Excellent. And I know your technology is very advanced too. You've met all the regulatory approvals and all those. Sorry, I'm not really as familiar with the regulatory pieces in the oil and gas industry, but yeah. I heard that on the show floor a lot too over the Global Energy Show. People being like, "Oh, is this still just is this still just a prototype?" But no, you're very far along.
Yeah, it's deployed in pilot programs, and we expect it'll be in fully approved technology in the future, near future. And we've been focused on kind of making sure the technology can address regulations and regulatory requirements for industry. So that's been a tight coupling, with always focused on regulations and how the technology can work within those regulations, as opposed to requiring a lot of assumptions and guesses on how it could fit. Right. We've really designed it so that it fits perfectly within what's currently there and what will be there in the future.
I'm curious now too, so since you have licensed, I love this example too, because I think a lot, U Calgary was the number 1 startup creator for 2 years in a row for research-based innovations. But I love, I think we're a little lower in number of licensed technologies, but you are a perfect example of, we've made this decision not to do the startup route. Really impressive. So as, academic innovators who have, decided to license their innovation, what advice would you give for other researchers who, are looking at, that decision, or what are the challenges or opportunities with licensing that you've experienced?
Well, I think it's important to have really good partners. And we spend a lot of time working with various people in the industry through different collaborative projects. And having really good partners is critical because we understand each other, what we can provide, and how we can work together to get the technology out there, reducing emissions. So I'd say the people are very important.
Yeah, we've said people a lot. There's a real people element to this whole side of kind of climate mitigation and greenhouse gas emissions reductions. As well, the kind of piloting opportunities through the partnerships have been critical. We've learned things, and I would say small but important things have come from those. We've also kind of at times been shocked that the technology is in fact doing kind of better than expected, I would say. So it's given us a lot of encouragement and kind of a more positive outlook. Whereas in a research area, you're sometimes ready for kind of that thing to break, right? Yeah. That one critical piece. But through the piloting, which is kind of those relationships have been central, we've been able to mature really far and focus on our R&D side, not on the startup creation and all that goes with that, but really focus on the technology. So we're very proud of how robust the technology is and how it's lasting and how it's continuing to be used, and how partners are coming to us and asking to use it. So it's been very encouraging, but I'd say the piloting element, get it out there. And I don't mean just for a week. We've had 2 years through all the weather of Alberta and conditions and so on to kind of get it piloted, and that's really been valuable to us. So partnerships, absolutely, people, and piloting.
Do you have like a simple story of from piloting technology in the field that really led you to make a change to your technology? Like you saw, is there any examples of that? Like I know you were in a sensing challenge, I think several years ago down in the States. Like I'm just really curious. Like, have there been any real world examples where if we hadn't taken this out and piloted it, we wouldn't know to make that that change?
Yeah, well, I think we've made a lot of changes to the software, and we, through the piloting exercise and working with people who are doing this leak detection job day in, day out, we realize how critical smooth software experience really is. And so we've put a lot of effort into making their experience, reducing the number of clicks, all these little things that you don't think about as a researcher, focused on trying to reduce error in algorithms and all these very highly technical things. But the user-facing side becomes extremely important, and we've spent a lot of time trying to decompose how people are using the technology and find those little pieces that can make them much happier and more effective in the field, and that's come back to us very positively. Great feedback. People love it when we make little tweaks that make their day go a little bit faster and easier.
That's great. You're able to make those tweaks and actually affect the user experience of your technology.
Absolutely, yeah, and it translates into more sites being done per day and more emissions reductions in the end. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I do recall a time when in 2018 when we were down in the U.S. in a big competitive project, and we learned right then and there also that the configuration of the experiment that we were a part of, that we had no control on, it gave us ideas on what we needed to do to change the software toolings. I do recall Tom in the passenger side, literally deep inside the code as we're in the middle of an experiment, right? An experiment where we didn't know what the emission rate was, but we were being tested. But Tom was in there, right into the algorithms, changing things, and he was trying to actually, I think we were trying to create numbers on the fly. We were literally trying to see if we could tell them a number, what we thought it was on the fly. But that experience was also really instrumental because it gave us an understanding of the importance of testing and how we establish really rigorous protocols for testing. And it gave us a better sense of work practice, which is a term we use to describe how the technology should be used to find and reduce emissions. And it allowed us to focus there, now almost 5 years ago, and build out software that specifically went after that. And the only other element that I would add that's been really, I think, really important is you can't do this from an office. You have to be in the field. And so partnerships have facilitated that, right? We can go out to the field, we can work with them, we can talk to, not the people in Calgary, the people in the field. And I think the emissions challenge, and especially with methane, it's not going to be solved by sitting in an office space, right, and working on the computer. It's going to be solved by engaging people in the field, working with them, tweaking things in our software to support them. So that's been really critical. And it's a differentiating, I think, aspect of our technology is really that engagement with the field.
And I know since the research side is in R&D with your technology still the core of what you do, and I just love how you're able to engage the students in the research and really in that field testing, and they're driving the trucks, right?
It's just two of us here, but there's a whole team of other folks who either work directly on PoMELO or are using the truck for other research or are learning from the stuff that we find in terms of our data. And so I just want to acknowledge the vast network we have here of folks who are using methane data from these projects as well.
Amazing. So I guess my final question really is what is next for your research with PoMELO?
Oh boy, it's never ending, right? I think Tom and I, going back in history, I think Tom kind of instilled upon me the continuous improvement element of software and of technology. So that's what we do really well at the universities. We're always, even when we don't communicate it, we're always on continuous improvement. And sometimes we pop things up that are surprising to people, but it's because we're always working on it. So we are working on one of the aspects, and Tom can share perhaps some others. One of the aspects we're working on is how do we help people in the entire team of a industry partner using the technology? How do we help them make informed decisions, not just in the field when they're there in the truck, but also more predictive, more holistic and managed type decisions of their emissions? So we're working on kind of connecting not only our data streams from the systems that we have, but from other technologies. And I'd say we've made big progress on that already, is to allow people, whether they're sitting in the truck and they need to bring in satellite or aircraft or drones or handheld camera data, all right there in the field to make decisions. That's our big one of our big software challenges moving forward. But we have some others also in terms of the passive system.
Yeah, PoMELO collects a lot of numbers. Too many numbers, and they all pile up in our databases. And so the big challenge is to try to extract as much useful information out of those numbers as we possibly can. And so, yeah, that's kind of our big next thing in terms of the emissions measurement and plume modeling and wind side of things, is to try and pull everything we can out of data that's just collected during the process of doing leak detection surveys. And to give you a little bit of a sneak peek, we've had great success. So we're going to have some great announcements on that moving forward, because we're really excited about the potential for making use of all the numbers we've collected.
Oh, I love numbers. And you've also looked at, I think, I know PoMELO was designed for the upstream oil and gas sector, but I think you're actually doing some research now looking in urban settings as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, look out! PoMELO's in Calgary. Right? It's driving around Calgary, looking for city scale emissions. So cities need help in understanding their kind of emissions profile, where things are coming from. We're kind of transitioning some of our research and knowledge from the upstream into the urban sector. And we have a lot of learning to do. We absolutely acknowledge that, because it's not directly transferable, right? They're different emission sources and very different in some cases. But we have a big 5-year project now looking at that with a big group, a big team, not just the University of Calgary. We do have Faculty of Engineering and School of Public Policy. We also have University of Toronto and McGill. And so with students, a big cohort of students, we are going after kind of the city of Calgary's methane emissions. So we'll be coming to a neighborhood, maybe near you, and driving around and looking. But not only will it be PoMELO, it will be a whole suite of technologies that are fit for purpose. Tom has a big role in that as well, in terms of developing understanding and inventory of emissions.
There's so much on the go for you and with your research and with the system in use. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. So thank you so much, Tom. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The PoMELO system is available to license through Innovate Calgary. To learn more about PoMELO, visit pomelo-methane.ca. And to learn how to move your research to impact in the Innovation at UCalgary ecosystem, visit ucalgary.ca/innovation.